Hello, for those of you that don't know me by name already, I am Sharice, and I will be presenting on the Sakoku. The Sakoku is just a fancy way of saying the Japanese isolationism. When you literally translate the Sakoku in Japanese, it means locked country. Now, the Sakoku was said to have lasted between 1633 to 1853. Now, notice in parentheses, I do have it under the 20th century as well. Many would argue that even though the policies of the Sakoku ended in 1853, the mentality itself and effects we can see today, and that's why many would say that the dates actually lasted up to the 20th century. Here is a picture depicting the shogunate, which was pretty much like the leader or king of Japan, of ancient Japan. And under the Tokugawa, which was the like what we would consider the government today, the Sakoku or isolationism was enacted. Right, so here we see a timeline showing the major events of the Japanese isolationism. Now, this policy was enacted in 1633 by the shogunate, as previously mentioned, and during the policy, there were many attempts to end it. Western fleets engaged in opening up Japan from 1647 to 1849. Now, this was because many saw Japan as a vital nation to national globalization and foreign trade. So they were very upset when the Japanese Sakoku enacted that there was no trade, no immigration, and absolutely no foreign relations. And this was so serious that it was penalized under death. Now, American, Russian, and French ships, as well as other European ships, all attempted to engage this relationship with Japan, but were rejected. It wasn't until Commodore Matthew Perry and his fleet of black ships in 1853 came and forcefully entered Japan that the Sakoku or the policies ended, and with this, trade began back up with Japan. Now here we see a photo of Japan, a map of Japan, sorry, and all around here, all around the edges of the island nation, were outposts where they would monitor ships and the ports to make sure that there was absolutely no one coming in or out of the country, and to also ensure that there was no trade going on. Here we see this in a beacon. They were so serious that they had soldiers who would, the little guy would just hang out in here and watch the coastline, which would be somewhere probably down around here, and make sure that these things weren't going on. They were very, very, very serious about this mentality. And here is just a picture of Commodore Matthew Perry's fleet of black ships, which was a very significant figure in the Sakoku because it is what ended the policies of the Sakoku itself. Now, there are two different theories on the Sakoku. One of the theories was that the Sakoku was a good thing, that it preserved Japan, that it preserved its culture and kept it pure, per se, from other nations and its peoples and ways of thinking. Now, the other theory is that the Sakoku delayed globalization of Japan. And by saying this, it means that impediment of Japan's internationalization today is rooted from the mentality of the Sakoku back then. It's still seen today because immigration and emigration are very limited, and all of the religious, financial, economical and political aspects of Japan are much, much different than those of developed nations such as the United States. Now, the Sakoku was very important because it involved many other Western nations that was trying to open up Japan. It also uh, affected Japan itself because it, of course, at the time closed off and did all these impacts. But today, it still has effect on Japan. So yeah, it affected not only Japan but the other Western nations as well. Now, some very important sources to keep in mind when trying to study the topic of Sakoku are books. Books are one of our most prized resources, and for this topic, I believe this book itself has been most helpful. It's titled The Sakoku Edicts, Politics of the Tokugawa Hegemony. This is done by Michael S. Slayer. So if any of you wanted to further pursue your knowledge, this is an awesome book. He pretty much describes the Sakoku in itself, and then his opinion of what the effects of it were. And another one is the Blog of Asia. Very, very helpful. It's most unbiased, and it talks about every aspect of Asia, from culture to politics to the Sakoku and how they feel about it compared to how other nations. And that was my presentation, and thank you so much for watching.